TC Hill is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Hello and welcome back to Kick It Naturally. This is episode 373. I'm TC Hale and I'm hanging out with you today. And I'm really excited because I'm going to talk with Dr. Jason Jones from the podcast Health Made Easy. And I've been a guest on his show and I really like a lot of the stuff that he talks about. And he's also a chiropractor. And what I love about chiropractors is beyond any chiropractic stuff that they do, they always have the mindset of they understand that there's an underlying cause to whatever you're dealing with. And if we can figure out what that underlying cause is and work on that, then we can improve the symptoms instead of just covering up the symptom or labeling you with the disease. I like that chiropractors look for the underlying cause of the situation. So today with Jason, I really dug into a lot of the mental aspects of the health situation and how to approach improving a health issue and how to approach reaching a goal. And he really shares some great gems that I think you guys are going to be super excited about. So I'm going to shut up and let's dig right into my interview with Dr. Jason Jones. I'm hanging out with Dr. Jason Jones. Dr. Jason Jones, what is shaking? How's it going? Thanks so much for being on the show.
It's a good day, Tony. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. It's been a little bit. Just been, taking a lot of naps and, taking your advice, get some more sleep, get my gut straight. Living the dream, man.
Well, anytime you got a nap involved, you're living the dream. So maybe we'll have to dig into that a little bit as well, how you fit that into a day and such. But, tell the listeners who don't know you. And if my listeners don't know you, they're doing it wrong. Because I've been on your podcast and they should have listened to that and learned some stuff from you. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast and how you got started with that, and then why you even got started in health stuff at all.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. So Dr. Jason Jones, my traditional training is that I'm a chiropractor. But before I did that, I was a certified athletic trainer. That was my undergraduate degree. And I transitioned out of that because my parents were restaurant owners for 18 years. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant, just imagine laying on the ground and somebody kicking you, repeatedly all day long.
I've worked in multiple restaurants for many years as a younger guy. And my wife and I decided that we weren't going to have kids unless they were forced to work in a restaurant for at least a period of time, just to experience that and to understand how to treat somebody who's a waiter and stuff like that. And just be,
Yes.
Just know what that's like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because I know people say, tip 15%. I'm like, if you're terrible, I'm going to give you 15%.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, but hopefully a whole heck of a lot more than that. But
yeah, if I'm giving you 15%, I probably punched you in the neck too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or maybe at least a scissor kick or something like that.
Right. Something.
Yeah. So it beat my mom up really bad, and she tried like everything under the sun, moon, and stars. She was that person that lived off of BC powders and, every medical intervention, nothing worked. And somebody said, well, you should go see a chiropractor. And then, she said the same thing we all say when you come from a really small town in South Alabama. Is like, well, what's that? Yeah. She went to see one. Only person that could help her. And I was like, I got to check this out. This kind of seems interesting. So I went and followed the lady around, kind of shadowed her, and then decided, well, I'm changing gears in my life. I'm going to move 1,000 miles away from home and go to school. And I did that and got out. And that was 20 years ago. So I've been in private practice ever since. But then back in 2015, I decided, I'm like, this podcast thing seems kind of cool. How can I get my voice out there with kind of low barrier to entry, with a little bit of equipment and maybe teach some people something. And, if I help one person, heck, that's totally worth it, and plus I like talking anyway. So here we go. And that's what we did. And we started out as Healthy Families Made Easy, transitioned that after a couple of years to Health Made Easy. And of course, being healthy is not easy, but it can be simplified down and it can be less complicated than most people make it to be. So that's sort of the purpose of my podcast, Health Made Easy, is to, take complex topics and kind of massage them down to what are the basic steps that people need to do to start the health transformation journey that basically all of us are on. We're either transforming into disease or we're transforming into health. There is no stagnation. There is no same. We're just sort of in this ebb and flow. And I like to kind of push people in the right direction. So that's me. That's who I am. I'm married for 23 years, got 2 great kids, 20 and 17, and just loving life.
Wow, that's fun. And with the kids and with your focus on health, even starting 20 years ago, how did that go with the kids? Did you incorporate that into your family, or was it
Uh,
you took care of you
100%.
and they were eating Cheetos and
Yeah, no. I mean, we gave them a lot of latitude, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And they indulge, here and there, but they really do quite well. I mean, my daughter is 17. She's like into CrossFit. My son is a collegiate swimmer,
Oh
very
wow.
much into health. He's following my footsteps, going to be a chiropractor. But I mean, we used to get calls from the daycare and they said, you got to come get your kid, talking about my son, he's orange, and I'm like, what do you mean orange? Like, he is orange. So we juiced a ton back then, so we're big into
Uh-huh.
juicing like carrots, anything orange he likes. So we just let him have it. So he turned orange, and my wife is half Thai. So he's already dark skinned, and he would be orange. I'm like, well, just put him outside in the sun. He'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And we used to take like liver, and like put it into like burgers and all these kinds of crazy
Right.
things,
I'm on
and
that now. Yeah. That's
vegetables, and we'd grind it all up. We put it in there and they go, Dad, these are the best burgers I ever had in my life. I'm like, you have no idea what you're eating, and I'm like, yeah, they sure are. And like, we never corrected them, if we were having salmon for dinner, and they were like, Dad, we love this chicken. You're like, yeah, me too. It's
yeah.
great. It's like, we just got to let them do their thing, and like really expanded their palates, big time. So I grew up in a household where there wasn't like options, you ate what mama put on the table, and that was kind of it. And we sort of took that same thing, but they didn't know any different. So it worked out actually quite well.
Yeah, when we were sending our boy to daycare in LA, when he was, 3 or something like that, and we'd send the food with him. They supplied food, but we wanted him to eat real food, and he would have vegetables in his lunch every day. And one of the moms told me one time, and my son's name is Jackson. One of the moms told me, she's like, I was cooking vegetables the other day, and I had them on the plate, and my daughter was like, "Oh, those are for Jax." Because she had never seen a vegetable before, unless it was her friend at daycare eating broccoli and such.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the kid thing can be a fun thing. But now that your kids are grown up and you're helping people with
Yep.
more than what people may just view as chiropractic care, you do a lot of health and a lot of mindset as well.
Yep.
What are the issues that you're seeing most people coming to you with today?
So they come with a variety of issues. I mean, we do the standard sort of musculoskeletal stuff, low back pain and, carpal tunnel syndrome and, neck pain and those kinds of things. But I also see a lot of people that, they have trouble sleeping. Their energy is low. They have digestive problems. They have all these various things. So we'd like to make sure that we have at least some strategies to be able to, or at least an analysis, so that we can say, hey, here's the best thing for you, and here's what you need to do. But the one thing I think that where most people struggle, and it doesn't matter what their condition is actually they really lack clarity, on what it is that they really want. Because a person who, let's say, has insomnia,
Hmm.
and they come in to see you or to see me, and they go, I just want to sleep better, and I'm like, that's great, and that's a really good goal to have, but knowing how that lack of sleep is impacting their life and impacting their day to day, and what it would really do for them to be able to get the sleep and get the rest that they need so that their body would function correctly, and how their whole life would be, different as a result of that. I think those are the pieces. So what I did was I created sort of this really simple 4-step framework to teach people, not only how to set a goal, but how to make it very attainable, and to be able to get a win out of it, even if they didn't get exactly, what they wanted. And we've actually put that into when we do what you would traditionally call in medical care a new patient history, but it could be an interview or whatever, if you're a health coach or something like that, on what are some questions that you can ask people to get them to really figure out what they're looking for. So
Right, because I
I
think a
think those are
lot
the
of
big
people
ones.
don't really look at that. They come from a framework where they have a symptom and they're just told to take a pill that covers up that particular symptom,
Yep.
and so that's the maximum amount of effort that they're used to putting into their health. So how do you take somebody that's coming from a broken system and help them understand that, oh, I'm going to be a participant in this whole thing? You know what? How does that even how do you open their eyes to that whole picture?
Yeah, and the reality is I don't even try to do that. It really is. I think when you are sitting down with someone and you're trying to be very curious, like you should be, and you're trying to understand deeply what's going on with them, it's really just a conversation is all that it is, and you want to know the important stuff. What is it, what's bothering you, how long you had it, how often is that happening, what do you think caused it, how bad is it when it's at its worst,
Hmm.
where is it, all those are all really, really important. But then it comes down to, okay, so why now? You've been suffering with this for 16 years. Why, why
That's
are you trying to address it now? And that gets you to like sort of the first question, I think, when it comes to setting a goal, which is what are you trying to accomplish? Because the more specific that you can make it, the better. So I'll use the insomnia part. So if we'll go, okay, well, I'm not sleeping well, I want to sleep well. Well, is it quality of sleep that you're looking for, or is it more quantity, or is it both? And
hmm
then if you can create a measurable system for that person, and you might do that on a scale of 1 to 10. It's like, how's your, if I'd say, Tony, how's your quality of sleep, on a scale of 1 to 10 right now? And you said 3. I'm like, okay, that's where we are right now. Where do you want it to be on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best? And you would
I,
give me a number.
right.
Yeah. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to backfill that down, because you're not going to go from a 3 to a 10.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. You'll probably go 3, 5, 7, 9.2, and then you might hit your 10, possibly sort of right around in there. So you have a sort of a measuring stick along the way to know, as you check in with someone or they check in with themselves, in a sort of objectively look at, where am I at? So that's one. And then you got to have a, because the goal may have like a number. You know what I mean? Like, I want to lose 35 pounds, or I want to lose 60 pounds. Well, okay, so you got to have that, so it's measurable. But then you also have to have, okay, well, when are you going to do that by? It's like, well, I want to do that in 30 days. I'm like, great goal. It can be done. Don't get me wrong, but there's consequences to losing 60 pounds in 30 days, and probably not ones that you actually would want to endure, quite possibly. So, what's the goal? How can we make it measurable? How much, by what time, by when, basically. Yeah. And then it comes down to, I like to set 3 separate goals. And I use something that I'd gotten from a colleague of mine. It's called an M as in Mary, T as in Tom, O as in outrageous goals. So you have M, and that's like the minimum target.
All right.
Then you have the T, which is the target, and then you have this outrageous goal. The T is really what you want. It's in the middle. It's like, I want to lose 60 pounds. Okay, so 60 is your T. Okay, what would you be happy with if you got something out of it? Like, well, if I lost 45, like, that'd be great. Okay, good. So that's minimum. Okay, and then like, what's like, if you shot for the moon, what would be amazing? They're like, well, God, if I lost 80 pounds, I think I'd be shredded. I'm like, perfect. That's your O. So if you don't get, if you lose 47, at least you still got something, and at least you have like a win under your belt, and that will give you the momentum, or the confidence, or the courage to continue towards what you really want, even if it took you longer than you thought it would. So I think that's sort of like that first piece, is really determining, what do you want? how much by when, make it measurable, and then set a variety of targets so that you can, kind of address that mental piece, because striving for goals and not hitting them is brutal. Like, it's
Yeah.
brutal on you mentally. You know what I mean? So, and it takes, not everybody can handle it. So I think if you give yourself some leeway with some multiple targets, you actually gonna do a lot better.
Right. And a lot of people have, let themselves down, or what they would call failed at, trying to fix something, 10, 20, even more than that times. And by the time they show up, they're a little beaten up, and maybe they can't handle another type of failure. So how are you helping people, create a good schedule that is actually also realistic? Because, you see people that, well, wow, I took that supplement, or I ate that food that you said, and
Mm-hmm.
every problem that I've had for the last 30 years didn't disappear. So what happened? Where did I go wrong? How do you help them make a realistic schedule?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that it comes down to, I think, two principles that we talk about a lot, which is healing. It takes time and it takes repetition. And it always takes time and it always takes repetition. You mentioned this earlier, which I'm glad you did, about, we sort of have this symptom, and then the traditional model is we go to the doctor, they do something, the symptom disappears, so now we're okay. Which isn't true, by
Yeah.
the way, in most cases. It just means that we did something that suppressed the symptom to the point where we didn't feel it anymore, and we just felt like, well, it got handled, you know. So I think setting realistic timeframes, and I think that's where someone going to a person with experience, because I know you have tons of experience because you've done a lot of things over a lot of years and help people with a variety of different things. You start to learn these time frames, and you start to learn these things that are complicating factors. Like, for example, you take somebody, we just had the Super Bowl. You take somebody who's like Tom Brady, who takes like super duper care of himself. He's in great physical condition. It's like, guy never gets hurt. And let's say he starts having trouble with like acid reflux, but then you take grandma, who's never taken care of herself. She smokes 2 packs of cigarettes today and a fifth of whiskey a day, and she's 89. Age and lifestyle factors and history are going to play a big role, and she's probably going to take longer. Now, it may not take longer, but it probably is. But at least it gives you sort of like these goalposts, or like, okay, Tom, he's probably going to whip something like that maybe in like 4 weeks, maybe, or maybe it might take him 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. But grandma, it might take her 12 months to do it.
Right.
Type of a thing. So I think setting realistic expectations for people, because the medical model has set us up to go, well, we want it now. Like, just make it go away right now. And I just do that. And when the pain goes away or the symptom goes away, I'm good to go. And it's just not true. That's not healing. That's just symptom management.
Right. Exactly. So you're trying to help people have a realistic viewpoint of the effort that's going to have to go into it and the time that it's going to take.
Yeah, you have
Right.
to.
And what else needs to be addressed, or what else do you need to help people understand before they're on before they're on their way and they're doing it?
Yeah, I think the most important question that anybody could ask themselves is why. We do that as children, and then when we're adults and we have children like you and I do, and they ask that question, it's like, oh my God,
I
they ask
ask
that
it
one
a
more time.
lot.
I know it's going to drive me freaking crazy, but adults, we stop doing that, and I think it's tragic, because it's the most important question, period. So it's like, okay, I want to lose 60 pounds. Well, why do you want to lose 60 pounds? And you ask yourself that question. It's like, well, because like I think I'd be healthier, or I think I'd be, I think I'd feel better. Well, okay, well, if you did feel better, like, what would that do for you? And it's like, well, I think that I would start exercising again. Okay, well, if you could exercise again, like, what would that ultimately lead to? And they're like, well, I feel like, I would, I'd drop the weight faster, and my wife and I used to love to go dancing. So we go out dancing again. Okay, great. And then it starts to niche down. You keep asking why until you kind of hit rock bottom, and rock bottom is always where the real answer is. You know what I mean? We live in a very surfacey, type of society where nobody kind of goes deep. But you keep asking that why question, you're going to get to the deep cause, and it may be, listen, I was in school and I got picked on because I was heavy, and I know that if I can get myself down and get myself skinny, that'll never happen again. And people won't give me the stink eye when I walk in the room or whatever that it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody's why is going to be different, but man, if they can answer that question, that is the driving force. That is the motivating thing that will get them out of the bed in the morning when they don't want to do it, when they don't want to go exercise or don't want to eat that, don't want to avoid the cheeseburger or whatever that it is. It will give them everything they need to be strong enough to endure the ups and downs of trying to get well, which oftentimes there are lots of those.
Right. And there's almost always going to be the ebbs and the flows. And, I have some specific health topics that I want to ask you about that I've heard you talk about
before.
Go for it. But before I get to that, I want to dig a little bit more into this, because we're talking a lot about really the mental aspect of the health and the helping the person, understand that there is a mental and even emotional sometimes aspect to what's going on. And when you're working with a client and they hit those roadblocks, how are you helping them get past the mental side of that? What do you see working well?
Yeah. So first thing is that again, setting the tone of the relationship early, and letting them know that they're gonna hit a roadblock. They're gonna hit a plateau, and roadblocks and plateaus are actually very normal. When you're in the healing space long enough, you start to understand that, like, when people hit sort of this part where they're healing, it feels like it just stops or it pauses, or almost like a flare up or something. That's actually the body is creating what I call a healing crisis, where it's going in there and it's doing something really special at that moment. So I think the most important thing for that person is to just encourage them that they're on the right track, but also recognize that what may have been working up to that point, it doesn't necessarily need to be thrown out. It just may need to be tweaked a little bit, because a lot of times if we just turn the dials ever so slightly on something, like maybe a dosage of this supplement, or increasing doing the frequency of this, or decreasing the frequency of doing this, or making these small modifications, that's really all they need to do to be able to get where they want to go. And then if you do need to pull a 180, just sitting down and having that conversation, say, hey, listen, this has gone really well. Now this is happening. I've seen this before. So we now need to switch gears and we need to go in this direction, from there. So I think just having a real frank, transparent conversation, and just letting them know that what they're experiencing is pretty normal.
Yeah, that's a nice aspect of having, when you're actually working with a health professional. Because I think, like you said, a lot of people will hit some kind of roadblock and they'll think, oh, well, this isn't working for me anymore. So I'm going to try that ice cream sandwich diet instead. Because this one, it worked for me for a while, but now it stopped. So I'm just going to drop it and do something else. When you're working with a professional and it's something that professional has seen, they can help you understand that, look, we just need to make an adjustment here and just, correct a little bit instead of throwing it all in the garbage and starting over again.
Yeah, that was a good word. Adjustment. That was very
I
good
thought
word.
you liked the garbage.
That was an excellent word.
Yeah. So, one thing that I've heard you talk a little bit about, and I'd love you to kind of discuss a little here is why is it so important that you have a healthy blood sugar and the troubles that can cause when that's not going right?
Yeah, man. Oh my gosh. That's like one of my favorite topics to talk about. Blood sugar is one of those things where it's blood sugar, what I call dysregulation, is just rampant. And it's so easy for our blood sugars to just get out of control because convenient foods that are easily accessible, unfortunately, are the ones that tend to make our blood sugar go insanely crazy. And then when they go really, really high, then the body, as you well know, it secretes insulin, which like knocks it down. And if it comes down sharply and really fast, it'll go below sort of a normal blood sugar level. And then you're going to get the cravings and all that stuff. And then the stress hormones are going to be released. And then you're up again, down again, up again, down again. And it's just a mess.
Right.
And it really throws a wrench into most all health problems.
And all the cool kids are doing it. You know, I mean,
All the
it's just,
cool
it's
kids are
so
totally
common
doing
that,
it, and
yeah,
I've
that's
done
just
it, and
right
it feels awesome on the way up.
on the
On the way
up.
down, not so much.
Not so much.
So
That's when you're yelling at the mailman because you don't like his shorts. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah, you bet. Because usually their shorts are terrible anyway. So
right.
they need a whole wardrobe change out there. In the USPS. But I think the important part is that if you can balance it and if you can keep it like level, fairly level,
Hmm.
then what you do is you're setting yourself up to switch the way your body burns fuel for energy, so you're not so dependent upon carbohydrates. And there's nothing wrong with that if your body just sort of tends to do better on higher carbohydrates, because there are people out there that they can do 300, 400, 500 grams of
Sure.
carbs a day,
Yeah.
and their blood sugar just stays square. I'm
Hmm.
like, wow, I wish that'd be great. I tend to be one of those people who, if we keep the carbs lower and I use them as sort of rocket fuel or like a performance enhancing drug, it works great. But if I
Hmm.
just willy nilly, eat whatever I want, whenever I want with carbs, because I'd love to live off of ice cream and pizza. That'd be great, and beer. But it just doesn't work too good for me.
Right.
But if we keep it level, it forces the body. My favorite thing it forces the body to do is burn fat for energy. And when you burn fat for energy, it's like having a log on the fire instead of having a twig, because the twig is going to run out really quickly. The log is going to burn for a long time, produce a lot of heat, give you a lot of energy, a lot of other health benefits, like, for your brain. And then it just takes so much stress off the system for your body to just burn stored energy, which is basically what fat is anyway. And you stay leaner. It's just overall for your health. It's just so incredible in so many ways.
And how will you help people, because they've been eating this way for 20, 30 years? How do you help them get out of that and even to understand, either the steps to do it or why am I doing this? Why can't I eat that?
Yeah. I think one, it's really hard. There's no doubt. It's not an easy thing. I think first and foremost, they have to be willing. I think they have to answer like what I call the third question in goal setting, which is how bad do you want it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Hmm.
You got to be an 8, 9, or a 10. Because if you're not an 8, 9, or a 10, you're like a 7 or lower, and sometimes even 8s. They will not do what is necessary. Meaning, let's say, go listen to a few of these podcasts that I did. Here's some articles that I wrote. Go read those, kind of get a better understanding about it, and then you and I can have we can have a conversation about it. Because I don't know about you. I got a really busy practice. So it's like, I don't have a lot of time, for long drawn out conversations with people. So
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons I pump out a lot of resources, so I can just direct people to that.
Right.
And a lot of times they can just take that and just run with it. But periodically I'll do like I'll do some sort of workshop or webinar or something, so and teach all of that from them. But big picture is to make that transition. I always say, let's start with one thing, like what's one thing that you can change like today, and that might be drinking more water. It
Right.
might be just bumping their protein up a little bit. It might be changing one meal a day. That's it,
That's
and,
good.
and in my point with that is that you do that until you feel like you've got that under control. And then we go to the next step. And once you add the second thing in there, if the wheels start coming off the bus, you drop thing number 2 and you go back to thing number 1, and then put thing number 2 in again when you feel like you can handle it again. And that's what happens is a lot of people, they try to change so many things so quickly, and that may work out for them, but you don't know what worked. You have no idea what was helpful.
Right.
And then when you go back to doing things the way you always did it, then you have no data set to be able to tell you what what was really effective. So yeah, so slow and methodical implementation, and that's where setting goals comes in. Having measurable goals, having an appropriate timeline, and then kind of like in staggering out the steps that they need to do. Now, if you take a type A person like me, like you can give me 10 things. You just go, listen, I just go do these 10 things, and I'm like, I'll kill that. I'll crush it. Don't worry about it.
My list is going to be laminated by the time I leave your office.
I know. And I want to have it in my planner, and put it in my calendar,
Right.
with color codes.
Uh-huh.
But not everybody can do that,
Right.
So I think just slow and steady is the way to go.
Right. And what's great is when you're talking about, how bad do you want it, and you need to be at an 8 or 9. A lot of the people, when they're at a 5 or a 6 and they're not willing to do it, they'll kind of keep doing what they're doing until that starts to create this degenerative problems, and starts to increase the level, and can make them, they show back up, a couple of years later, and all right, well, I'm a 9 now. I was a 6, but this is really getting a little bit silly what's going on now.
Yeah. I'm telling you what, pain and health problems are amazing motivators.
Right.
They really are. I mean, it's just like, it's like, I can't swing my golf clubs anymore. I can't lay down on the floor and play with my kids. I
Right.
can't enjoy pizza. For Pete's sake, I'm Italian. You know what I mean? It's like my mom's sauce kills me. It's just like, it's like I'm ready to do something now.
She hasn't talked to me in a month because I won't eat her
it's
cooking.
like
right.
it's like, because it's typical, like, it's in this, I'm not trying to be like sexist, but ladies tend to be a little bit more conducive to making changes than guys are. And when it comes to their health, because the guy will come in and he'll go, it's like his legs falling off, and he's like, yeah, doc, I think I'm just going to like wait a while. It's like, it's okay. Like the other one has to fall off before, like they're like, can you put them back on now? I'm like,
yeah,
no.
Well, yeah, I can say, I mean, guys are just clueless. They're just not paying attention to their body whatsoever. You ask a woman questions and she knows, but you ask a guy, are you bloating after you eat? He's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's what you get, because they're not paying attention enough. And women usually are better at creating change for themselves because they're more connected to their body. And I don't know why that is, but I definitely see that as true.
Yep.
Yeah. So, the other thing I wanted to dig in a little bit with you is a little bit about liver function, and, why that's important, and the things that can kind of start going wrong when that's not going so well.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. Yeah. So just a little bit of a backstory. So I think it was 10, 12, 13 years ago, I just sort of lose count. And when you're sick, like when you're better, you don't care to remember, you don't want to remember the stuff, So I had amalgam illness, which is basically all the silver fillings in the mouth, had high mercury levels in my system. So I was a wreck. I mean, like really bad. Like I'd have to lay down in the middle of the day just to kind of rest, to be able to like handle my afternoon. And I had blood sugar dysregulation at the same time. I mean, everything was a total mess, but having a strong, healthy liver is a big part of being able to detoxify, the body, because the liver, depending on what you read, some sources say it does 500 things a day. Other sources say it does 3,000. Any way you slice it, it's a workhorse, and it does so many things and does so much for us. It's massive for digestion. Yes, it filters the blood and does all of that. But digestion and detoxification go together, because you've got to, not only can you filter out the toxins that are there, but then you're going to dump them into the gut so that they can be excreted. However, if you don't have like good bile function, from the gallbladder, which is like its little brother, kind of sitting underneath its wing in there, then you can't absorb those things. And if your diet's off, then you don't have the fiber to absorb those things and excrete it. And then you end up recirculating them around. So I love strengthening the liver. And I think that it has to be done sequentially, because you've got the way that it detoxifies and gets rid of things is sort of like this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And oftentimes these fly by night products that are 7-day detox, to drop 10 pounds in a week, those kinds of things, they heavily push phase 2 liver detox, which is nothing wrong with that unless your phase 1 is weak. If your phase 1 is weak and you push hard on phase 2, you're going to feel terrible. And you're going to like, this stuff doesn't work, and a lot of those products don't work because they're,
Right.
they're just marketed really good. But if you sequentially go after it and you start, like we talked about when you were on my podcast, it's just like, how do you heal digestion? You start at the top, and you work your way down, how does it fall apart? Most of the time it falls apart from the top down. So if you start with phase 1, strengthen up phase 2.
Can you say what phase 1 is? I think what do you call that phase 1?
Oh, good boy. You put me on the spot, man.
I did.
I know, right? I know. I'm trying to think about it. It's like, oh Lord, I'm trying to think of the big word for it. But it's like, it's almost like the capture phase, sort
Okay.
of like you just kind of
Right.
capture everything.
Mhm.
And then when you go into phase 2, it's sort of like, reformulate everything and makes it available to kind of be excreted,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like the process to go through. So yeah, so if you don't capture well, then you can't hold on to it, and you can't bind it all up and then get it ready to dump it. So yeah, you have to have that sequence, to be able to do the detoxification. And again, that's only part of the liver function. Is that
And the phase 3 is when it's leaving the body. That's when
yeah,
you're getting
going
rid of it.
bye-bye.
Is that right? And a
Yeah.
lot of people, they do these, the 7-day detox things, and they're supposedly detoxing the liver and getting all this junk out of the liver, but then they don't have a way for the body to get rid of it. So they're just putting in more junks, and that's why they really feel lousy. They just put all these toxins in there that now don't have a way to leave. And yeah, I hate when people do that.
Oh, I do too. I mean, just think about just having this. Just think about if your digestion is slower than it should be. That
Mhm.
means those things are hanging out in there longer than they should, so they're more likely to get reabsorbed, back into it. And if you're dehydrated, and then your bowel will say, "Wow, well, we got water in here, so I need to reabsorb that water back up into the body so we can use it." Well, it's not just going to just reabsorb the water, it's going to reabsorb some of the stuff that's in it.
Right.
So yeah, it's complicated, uh, for sure. But I think again, just giving people those practical steps that they can do to just start the process up, I think is so important. And I think it also comes back to something that we talked about when you were on my podcast, which was the bioindividuality. And some people are going to do really well with X, Y, and Z. But if you gave that to the very next person, thinking that you've now found this panacea of a cookie cutter approach, and
Yeah.
they
Oops.
really needed A, B, C, and F,
Yeah.
man, you're going to wreck them.
Right.
So it's just like it really, in testing, so important, because the liver is one of those weird organs that, I mean, it could literally be working at 15 or 20% of its capacity, and like no symptoms
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Right.
That's scary.
And for
Super
you,
scary.
your toxic overload was from metals. Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Is that
Yeah.
was for you? And there's a wide variety of things, I guess, that could be causing that kind of an issue. Are there some that you see more than others, or is the metals a really thing that you're seeing a lot of?
I think, well, it's kind of like anything else. It's like, a lot of times you find what you're looking for,
Hmm.
and you could find somebody that has a high metal load, but their body has redistributed it appropriately and kind of walled it off. And if you go in there and stir it up, you're going to cause problems, but it could be a viral load. I mean, it could be a lot of things. So, I think because I'm just a simple kind of guy. I think that if people will start to, and this kind of goes back to your question from before, it's like, where do you start with people making changes? And that is, don't take anything away from them. Add things that will create a healthier situation for them.
Hmm.
So most people, like let's say we take the liver, for example, they're going to do well if they, eat vegetables that have minerals and vitamins in them that support liver function. Just like most people, not everybody, but most people, if they just cut their carbs down, and modulated their proteins and fats a little bit better, they could keep their blood sugar much more level. So I think just taking simple strategies and just putting them into play actually tend to help out, quite a bit for most people, instead of going, you can't eat that pizza anymore,
Uh-huh.
but if you just go, hey, listen, instead of eating pizza every single night of the week, why don't on Wednesday, let's have a salad, or something
Uh-huh.
like that, and then every other night you can have a pizza. And the healthier decisions that they make over time, and when they start gaining momentum towards their goals, it just, and then those habits start kind of getting ingrained in their system. They just naturally make better decisions, and they naturally just edge out those things that are creating and causing the problems in the first place.
Right. And like you mentioned before, getting somebody to increase their protein a little bit. Well, when they're increasing their protein, they're likely reducing, carbs or these other things that they might need to reduce. So
Yeah.
instead of taking it away, you're just mentioning, hey, why don't you just add this a little bit more?
Yep. Yep.
That's really good
It's a
stuff.
much easier strategy.
Right.
It's like we know that if a person took their supplements 3 times a day, it's probably going to be better than if they took them all at one time. But I also know that people work all day. So like when I do a supplement routine with somebody, it's just like, take these in the morning before you leave, and then take these with dinner when you get home. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, that's not going to be 100% effective. I'm like, well, what's better than 100%? Or what's better than, well, it's like, if they don't do anything, it's zero.
Right.
So if it's 75 or 80% effective doing it that way, it's better than nothing.
Right.
That's for sure.
That's for real. Um, Jason, this has been awesome. I know we got to wrap this up. Is there one piece of advice that you would like to give people that may be feeling a little bit lost, as far as maybe the most important thing to consider for themselves or to look at with themselves?
Yeah. Regarding their health. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So I'm going to recap a couple things real fast. Ask yourself this question. What are you trying to accomplish? What is the specific goal? Make it measurable. How much do you want to achieve by when? Set those targets, minimum target, and outrageous goal. Why do you want it? Keep asking the why question until you get to the bottom. Okay. And you have like this burning desire to want to do it. How bad do I want it on a scale of 1 to 10? That'll tell you if you're committed right now to do it, or if you need to spend any time at all going towards that. And then ask yourself a final question, which is, what are you willing to do?
That's great.
And also, what are you willing to not do? Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. Jason, this is awesome stuff. Where can people find you and learn more about what you're doing?
A couple of spots. Our Facebook page is probably a good spot. They can reach out and message us through there. It's Dr. Jason Jones, Health Made Easy. And I'm on Instagram. I think it's at Dr. Jason Jones. You can send me a DM through there as well. That's a good spot. And then everything else is connected to that. So I think that's where we spend most of our time and kind of punch out most of our content is on those two platforms.
Right. And be sure to check out the podcast Health Made Easy. He recently had this brilliant guy on there. You probably want to hear that for sure. So
one of the smartest guys I have ever interviewed. And he tried to be funny.
Didn't work out.
And he achieved a little bit, but yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah. But what I really like about your podcast is that you have a lot of topics that it's quick. It's like here's 8 minutes. I'm going to break this down for you. And then a person can just listen and move on with their day. They don't have to commit 3 hours like I ramble on sometimes. So I like that. I'm going to have to start rocking that out some. But
dude, I love it.
But yeah, Jason, thanks for being here. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. See you, Tony.
You bet. Pretty good, right? So if you want to check out any of the show notes, just go to kickitnaturally.com/episode 373. And if you need some help with some of these type of health issues that we talked about, I'm actually working with some clients right now. You could go to kickitnaturally.com/consultation to see if we might be a good fit for each other, and see if we should do some type of free consultation to see if, kind of where you are, and see if we would be a good match to work with each other. Or if I'm a little pricey for some people, if we're not a good match in that way, I can connect you with someone who might be. So if you're needing some help and you're feeling a little stuck, just go to kickitnaturally.com/consultation and you can check that stuff out. Okay, we'll see you guys next week. If you have something that you want me to address in an upcoming episode, just go to kickitnaturally.com and send us a message, and we'll see if we can fit that into an upcoming show. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon.